All right, let's do another unplanned live. So I've been trying to plan these in advance with topics just to, I don't know, get folks prepared. So if you want to come and discuss things that you have the opportunity to. For a while there, I was trying to go and make videos, but sometimes picking topics can be challenging. Just due to the fact that I'm not sure what the general populace of YouTube is interested in learning more about. Not to mention the fact that I've done a lot of topics as far as like a general high level coverage goes. And I find that the algorithm tends to be random on what it suggests to individuals. So I thought I would start doing more lives. The thing that I like about lives is I like the interaction and I like the ability to kind of adjust what the topic is based upon feedback in chat. So, as always, I highly encourage individuals not only to join lives when they're happening, whether they're scheduled or random like this, but also to make sure that you are going back to old videos and commenting, liking, and interacting to show me, as well as the algorithm, what you're most interested in discussing. When I bring a lot of this information to YouTube, I'm doing so for the purpose of not only sharing, because I like to teach, I like to talk. Would have loved to have been a history teacher. Unfortunately, with the way the state of affairs are in the world with teachers, it is very hard to make a living as a teacher. Hello to Dusty Dud. Good to see you. Welcome to the live. But also the fact that some of the topics that I discuss is probably not something that I would necessarily have in a school type setting. Although, like I said, general history teacher would have been fun because I do like exploring and discovering history and where things come from. I also like science a lot. Those are like the two topics I like the best. So I like to read and research when it comes to historical practices, whether they be spiritual or not. It's just, it tends to be more interesting for some to have more of the spiritual aspect of stuff. Like I used to do videos on games. I used to do videos on martial arts and mysticism, gaming, collecting, all sorts of things. It's kind of all over the place. People suggested as feedback is maybe I should center in on one topic. So for this channel here on YouTube, I thought focusing on more on spirituality might make more sense. But then that got me thinking, what was it that I struggled with when I first researching spirituality? Like, what is it about neo-paganism or New Age practices that folks are drawn to? Why do they even bother looking? I do believe that people are starting to be raised in a spirituality. I remember one person I was speaking with. So I was working at one job where it was like a plasma donation center. And I had one lady come in and we had stumbled across in conversation with pre-screening people for plasma donation that she had mentioned that she was into polytheism types of stuff. Specifically, I believe she was a Wiccan specifically, if I remember correctly. And she was raising her son to be Wiccan. Now, I was not a Wiccan, but we had at least a similar spiritual belief system. Now, at the time, I was engaged, and I ended up marrying my wife back in 2007. And she had offered to do the ceremony for us. Now, the thing is, though, we wanted to customize our ceremony. And she eventually backed out, said it was too far removed from what she did or what she knew. Because I guess in her tradition, you usually have both a priest and priestess. And she wanted to have her son do the ceremony with her. We wanted our friend that we had known for a while to do the ceremony with her, and she didn't want to do that. And a lot of the ways that we went about having her ceremony, I guess with hers, it wanted to be more focused in a more ritualistic way, where ours was more a symbolic way that we went around and doing it. We wanted to have what's called a hand fasting. Now, a lot of people, they tend to look at hand fastings and they're like, oh, that's New Age paganism. Not really. Christians got hand fasted as well. I mean, at the end of the day, a wedding of any type is just a union of two people who are in love. And there's multiple ways of going about doing that. Religious, non-religious, symbology behind some of the things that you do, and then there can also be things that are incorporated into it that are very much spiritual in nature. And we wanted to steer away from being too spiritual with it, believe it or not, because it was more about us than it was about spirituality. And I find the reason that I'm bringing this up is not only was there such a big difference between the way this individual practiced versus how we practiced, but she was raising her son to practice a certain way as well. So there are starting to be more and more additional generations of individuals who are of the New Age persuasion. So that made me think of that. Then I also thought about stuff like during the hand fasting ceremony with me and my wife. Her mother did a tradition that was Polish because my wife is mostly Polish. In fact, both of her parents are immigrants from. Well, her mother grew up in Germany, but they're 100% Polish. They went from Poland to Germany and then Germany to the U.S. And then her dad came from Poland. So, like, first generation American, Polish American. And they wanted to do a Polish tradition. And they had this really beautiful ceremony they did with salt, a actual, is it gold or silver? We had a coin. It was made out of a precious metal. And I want to say it was pure silver. Might have been a gold coin. We still have it. It's just we don't leave it out. And bottle of wine, salt, and bread. And there was like basically this thing they said it in English, of course, because most of the people there was English speakers, with my family and stuff and her family. Not everyone spoke Polish. I wouldn't have understood it. And it was like salt representing the bitterness of life, the bread that you never go hungry, fruit what the wine was for, and the coin was so that you never go poor. So it was a symbology thing. Now it's done in Poland, and it's not necessarily tied to a specific religion or faith, but we found it to be very beautiful and very meaningful. Things like that is what drew me to doing research in the historical stuff. I like looking up, well, where does this come from? Why do we do this? And if somebody is new to spirituality, and in many cases, a lot of people I think that find and look on YouTube are looking for answers. Now, if you're raised in a tradition, and I don't know, I can't speak for other people, but I haven't known a lot of people that were raised in a New Age polytheistic type of a faith. Most people tend to be, I am not satisfied with the religion my parents raised me in, so I want to look somewhere else. So how do I help them find answers? That's sort of what drove a lot of the conversations I've had with my lives and a lot of the videos that I've done on YouTube, was driving towards discovering your own answers. Not to mention, too, that when you bring up and you speak to other individuals, you give others the opportunity to interact and question your sources or information and possibly share some of their own. And I think that's important. I think that's something we miss often when it comes to community. I used to attend pagan gatherings, and people were kind of all over the place, and they talked in short, small groups. And I didn't interact with a lot of folks. I went to psychic conventions and stuff, and it seems people are all over the map. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what do you gain by going to these large festivals? What do you gain from these interactions? Mostly it was for vendors. People wanted to purchase stuff. Now, back in my day, I always used Azure Green. Azure Green's a great website, by the way. If you haven't heard of Azure, here, let me hold on. They're still in business. It's azuregreen.net now, so I'll give you a link. So this is like, it's one of the better websites out there, or at least it used to be. We used to get a magazine sent to our house, and we would look through and flip through the magazine. They have like statues and necklaces and rings, amulets, herbs, candles, like all of the essential physical materials that you might consider. They even had a lot of books, like Llewellyn Publications. You could buy a lot of their books through Azure Green. So Llewellyn Publications, like I said, I've got tons of books, but it tended to be individuals that kind of were getting into it, similar to how I did, and they would just write down what they believed or what they had heard, and they would sell it to others. So you have a lot of folks that get into this echo chamber when it comes to spiritual practice. And I find that the further you get into New Age spirituality, the further removed you get from organized spirituality. Some people have been taking an approach to spirituality of what does the general census of people do? you know, how do I do this the proper way? Or they will get their ticket on what they consider to be part of the spiritual community. Like, I'm wearing my pentagram, or I'm wearing my Mjolnir, or I'm wearing my whatever symbol in their head represents their spiritual path to them, and they're wearing that, and now they're part of the in-group. But then they realize there's not really an in-group to be part of because everybody's doing it their own way. So that's what I'm hoping to encourage here, is that learning and questioning and finding some answers and some sources for yourself. I'd rather equip people with the tools to go hunt things down and question things than to just constantly repeat and regurgitate information. And I know I say that in almost every live and video I do anymore, but I really do feel it's important. It's something I'm pretty passionate about. I like discussing. I like talking. And like I said, I like history. Love history. I love arts and crafts and creative stuff, poetry, stories, and finding out where a lot of the stuff comes from. I don't want to limit myself. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's not a good source because it was written down by Christians. And it's like, Christians kept most of the stuff alive. I mean, if you really think about it, like, even Christians that supposedly converted to Christianity from, and we're talking way back in the day here, they converted to Christianity from whatever paganism or heathenism they were doing back in the day. They didn't really fully convert. People do not give up their traditions. And you see this all the time. You see people practicing stuff, and especially in a lot of these New Age paths, I see a lot of these self-proclaimed, they call themselves Norse pagans typically. These self-proclaimed Norse pagans, like, ever since that Vikings TV show came out, it's become the new popular thing to call yourself. They'll call themselves a Norse pagan, and they practice it like they're still doing Christianity. I've done videos, and here on YouTube I've done some TikToks about it, where people are like, oh, he's the All-Father, not the Some-Father, because there's two big mindsets on practicing quote-unquote Norse paganism. One of them being that you can only practice Norse paganism if it's part of your own ancestry and heritage. And the other one being anybody can practice it. You have no right to gatekeep. And I'm like, okay, all right. So let's hear some folks out. On one hand, yeah, I think spirituality, people can practice whatever they want. But on the other hand, I don't fully comprehend why folks want to practice other culture spiritualities. Not say that they can't, but I don't understand it. So, like, for me at least, but again, this is a personal choice, it's like connecting with my ancestors. And some of the Scandinavian practices are very much about venerating your ancestors. So if they're not your ancestors you're connecting with, like, what are you doing? And then I see people, like, there's this thing on TikTok right now where people who are called, not everyone, but there are a large group on TikTok, specifically on Norse Talk, that do this makeup, and it's very much their cosplaying. They're cosplaying based upon goofy games or TV shows, and it's fine. You can like what you like, but they're like doing this like chin line and stuff, and apparently there is now talk about indigenous people saying that that is something sacred to their culture and tradition, and you shouldn't be doing it. So some people are trying not to do it, and I'm like, wait a minute. So let me get this straight. It's not okay for people to say this is their cultural traditions if it's talking about Scandinavians. But if it's them doing something that's outside of the Scandinavian culture, then we can't do it anymore because it's their... they're not holding everything to the same standard, and I don't understand that. Like, people get cultural traditions or they don't. And I think that's the confusing part for me. It's like people get on board and like, hey, this is what I'm practicing, this is what I'm doing. It's like, where are you getting your information from? What are you doing? Are you reading Eddas and Sagas? Like, are you just making this up as you go along? Are you watching TV shows as your inspiration? And when you say stuff like this whole all-father, some-father things, it's like, so what is that supposed to mean? And I've said this before in videos too. The justification for someone who's not Scandinavian, and people seem to think it's about skin color, it's not. If you don't have any Scandinavian ancestry whatsoever, and you're practicing, you have a right to do that because you're a human being who has the right to do that. It has nothing to do with Odin being referred to as the All-Father. And this whole idea of this single being that's kind of the father and creator of all things, to me, is very, very Christian mindset. Because even if you go by the sagas and Eddas on supposed creation stories, there is one story of Odin creating humankind, but he did it with his brothers, Vili and Ve. They took a ash tree and an elm tree and carved them in the first man and woman, Embla and Asker, which is ash tree and elm tree. Basically, it's the name for ash and elm in Old Norse. So it's like he did it with two others. So that doesn't really make him the Allfather. Then you also have the story of how the class systems got created by Heimdall sleeping with humans, how you got the three class systems in Scandinavian society, because you have the Jarls, the Karls, and the my mind is blanking out. It's like, why is my mind blanking out? It's basically like the thralls. Wow. But were they called thralls? Jarls, Karls, and thralls? I don't think they're called thralls. I gotta look up what the three class system is now. The Dusty Dead. When I first got interested in the stuff 6 years ago, I got into Wicca. I thought every spirituality and religion was organized and centralized like Christianity, even though Christianity is decided. I didn't realize that back then. A lot of people don't. Like, people try to get into it and they're thinking like, oh, now I'm connected to this large organized group, and they're really not. I would argue the same thing for Christianity, because it's different based upon the denomination in the church. Christianity is broken into so many subgroups, and you can have different Christians that practice different ways. Some go to church, some don't. Some follow the commandments, some don't. There's different versions of the Bible. There's like the King James's version of the Bible some people swear by. It's literally called King James's Bible, and it's different than the Bible he rewrote it from. And it's like, and people are okay with that. It's like, people as humans are so divided when it comes to spirituality. It's infuriating, which again, why I feel like spirituality is a personal choice. It's what you yourself choose to do. I meant divided. Oh, Christianity is divided. Yes. Sorry. I agree with you. Yes. 100%. Three class systems. Scandinavia. Jarls. Jarl Karl. It is thralls. Okay, I was right. Huh. Look at that. I wanted to say serfs, but I knew serfs was English. But yeah, Heimdall apparently created the three different class systems. So, and I guess that's the other thing. It's like, I've heard some people who call themselves Norse pagans, and they're acting like the Havamal, which I've actually, supposedly it's pronounced Halvamach, not Havamal. Halvamach, if you go by whatever language I think it's Old Norse it's supposed to be based upon. But apparently it's pronounced more like that. I don't know how accurate that is, but it's definitely not Havamal. That's definitely an American English way of pronouncing it. They act like it's a Bible. It's literally a single poem in a large collection of poems. Yes, it's words of wisdom. Yes, it supposedly came from Odin. But it's like, there is not a centralized book. So why are Norse pagans looking to elevate Odin as the main deity, and they're trying to elevate this book as the main book to go with? And it's like, that's just not how it works. I saw this one group, and I've mentioned this in our live or stream before, and it shows a group of prisoners in prison, and they've got a Mjolnir on the wall, and they're all wearing Mjolnir necklaces, and the one guy's holding a Mjolnir up over his head, and they're doing a ceremony. And if you changed out the Mjolnirs for crosses, it would look just like a Catholic church or some other form of Christianity. And it's like, again, so people don't give up their traditions. So if you're interested in this stuff, if you go for the cultural stuff, because that's how a lot of this things gets recreated, people look at the cultures these practices come from, and they try to tap back into those cultures. Find out what your own family did. You have something close to home. There's a reason they still do stuff. In Iceland, and I talk about Iceland a lot because, and I've mentioned this before, my mom was born in Iceland. She was born in Reykjavik because my grandmother, and generations back all the way to 800 CE, lived in Iceland. I'm very much an Icelander. My mom was born there. My grandma was born there. Some of my aunts and uncles were born there. Now, my grandpa was born here. His parents were born in Czechoslovakia on the Czech side. And they came over here, and then he was stationed in Iceland during World War II and brought back an Icelandic wife, my grandma. But, so anyway, when I want to talk about Iceland a lot, I talk about Iceland for two reasons. One, it's my own family, and two, it's where a lot of the stuff was written down. Snorri Snorkelson, a lot of things were written down in Iceland, but they have traditions. Now, the main religion of Iceland is officially, I think, Lutheranism. Like, there's a Lutheran church, like a huge church in Reykjavik in Iceland. And they do stuff in Iceland that's just not like you do other places. That is like, is it really Christianity? One of the videos I have on my YouTube channel here is I asked, is Odin just basically the way the Christians in different cultures worship a single god? Are they in Scandinavia, when they think of a single god, are they actually thinking of Odin, potentially? Hello, welcome to the stream. I'm just chitting and chatting and talking. Right now, I'm kind of going on a little exploration of why I do some of the videos that I do, and different ways that if you are new to spirituality, especially this new age neo-paganism stuff, how you might find some inspiration in modern practices that were kept alive. But when I was talking about Iceland, there are some things in Iceland that they do to this day, some things that I grew up with even, that it's during the time of what people call Christmas, but how much is it really Christmas? First of all, they celebrate it on the 24th. They don't do it on the 25th. They don't call it Christmas. They call it Yule. And I've had people say, oh, well, Yule translates to Christmas. The term Yule is much older than Christmas. They didn't stop calling it the same holiday they called it. So in America, people might say Merry Christmas, but in Iceland, they say Gleðileg Jól, which means, translates to Merry Christmas if you type it into a translator. In Norse, Germanic, and Celtic polytheism, is there a central higher deity like in Norse above Odin? Like how in Hinduism there is Brahma and above all Hindu deities. So when you talk about both Norse and Germanic, see, the Germanic traditions are very similar to the Norse traditions. Now, we say Germanic because we're talking about the Germanic tribes, and we say Norse because we're talking about the northern tribes, although technically the term Norse refers to Norwegian culture, which is part of the North Scandinavian area. So I'll typically say Scandinavian to separate that out, but they didn't refer to themselves as Norse. Today we refer to that time period as Norse during the Viking era. You can actually, and let me check my notes to see the exact breakaway. I actually have a timeline, and I got this from another YouTuber, and he got this from a couple books. But there's actually a break off from the Germanic traditions. Here we go. General timeline. And there's a couple links here I could probably share with you if you're interested. But anyway, so 10,000 BCE. When I say BCE and CE, I mean before Common Era and Common Era. Some people will say BC as in before Christ and AD as in Anno Domini. A lot of people don't know what AD means, even Christians, which is weird to me. AD means Anno Domini. It's Latin for Year of Our Lord. So when you say BC and AD, they're Christianized terms. BC and CE are generalized scientific terms that are not religious at all. So I always use the terms CE and BCE. That's just how I work. So to clarify, Common Era before Common Era. The Christian equivalent for CE is AD. So 10,000 BCE is where people claim the origin of Germanic paganism is. We have, archaeologically speaking, carvings and grave finds from close to 10,000 years ago, supposedly. This goes back as old as Hinduism and some of the other ones. So supposedly in the Germanic regions. So then we have the Iron Age in around 500 before Common Era. Then we start having a split from Germanic traditions. And we consider the split to be around 200 CE or Common Era to start referring to a separation of Germanic paganism and Norse paganism. Now, the reason we have this split is because of writings based upon an author by the name of Tacitus. Tacitus wrote a book called the Germania. Okay, so if you look that up, Tacitus Germania, it's around 200 CE. That's when we start separating out Norse from Germanic. And that's why a lot of people, you'll hear the terms back and forth or used interchangeably so often. In 476 CE, Rome falls and the Dark Ages start. And then in 793 CE is when we consider to be the beginning of the Viking era. The reason we call it the beginning of the Viking era is because of a specific raid on Lindisfarne. Lindisfarne is not the first raid. It's not necessarily the official beginning of the Viking era, but a lot of people consider it to be because it's a very significant raid that is around the beginning of what we refer to as the Viking era. You can check this out both in museums. I have a book from the museum that has a lot of this timeline stuff in it too, called We Call Them Vikings. I will do a library tour at some point. If you've not picked this up, it is it's a history book, Historica. You could only get this during the Viking exhibit when it was in the museum. And I went and I bought the book and I took a whole bunch of photos, which I'd happily share again because I love history, like I was just saying at the beginning of this stream. Don't know if I want to find it right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it by quickly flipping through it. But this book is incredible, but it's got a lot of the timeline stuff that we're talking about. And I remember when I saw the museum exhibit, they actually had a timeline up on the wall that also talks about the beginning of what we consider to be the Viking era, which is the raiding of Lindisfarne. Oh, yeah. Here's some things on the actual runes themselves, because we talked about this too, about runes being just an alphabet, but, you know, we'll piss people off with that because everyone thinks that they're for divination because of a poem. More in worship. Got some really cool amulets. Yeah, the long process of Christianization, yep, because they slowly converted the stuff. We even have historical evidence of them making Mjolnir necklaces and crosses in the same freaking mold. Like, we have the mold still, and I physically saw them from the Viking era itself. Here's some grave goods, some more stones, big stone carvings with, like, actual rune stones, or these big carvings with runes written into them telling stories and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the timeline in here. I thought I would find the timeline by quickly flipping through it. But either way, it's a great book. Phenomenal read. And I've only browsed through it because I went to the exhibit and I just wanted to remember my visit to the Viking exhibit. Anyway, so around 793 CE, we have the start of the Viking era, raiding of Lindisfarne. Then we start the conversion around 900 CE. Denmark converts as the official national religion being Christianity in 900. Then Iceland converted in 1000, Norway in 1020, and Sweden, which is considered to be the end of the Viking era, in 1066. And then we have about a 200-year period where we have nothing. And then we have a skald. Skald is a type of poet. It's basically a Scandinavian poet by the name of Snorri Sturluson. Now, Snorri himself was actually a Christian. His father, though, was apparently a Norse pagan and still worshipped Odin based upon some historical court records where he had specifically talked about Odin in some sort of thing dealing with court. I don't remember the exact details around it. You'd have to look it up. But if you look up Snorri's father and whether or not he was pagan, there's some history about that. So this is just to give you a basic idea. So when you ask me the Dusty Dud in Norse, Germanic, and Celtic polytheism, so I'm basically trying to tell you that Norse and Germanic paganism are very, 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 very similar. In fact, the I was under the impression in German you always pronounce the W's like V's. So their one deity would be pronounced as Woden, but apparently it's pronounced Woden. Woden and Odin, very similar. Like, it seems like it's the same deity to a lot of people. Is it? Probably not. But it's close enough that you realize they're probably referring to the same thing. I don't believe that Odin is considered the main deity. I don't think there is a main deity. When you look at some of the histories as they were written down from stories like Eddas and sagas about them, it suggests that there was a chief of a clan known as the Aesir who was Odin. But then you have the Vanir, which was a separate clan. Then you have the Jotun, which is a separate clan. They seem like they might have been the same species. In fact, they might have been humans, which is why some people believe you shouldn't worship the old Norse gods unless you're Scandinavian. Some people believe that. I'm not saying I do. But some people believe that because it's part of, like, we're descended from them because they were humans, which is an interesting thought and definitely changes the perspective for a lot. Why Wiccans is called Pentacle as theirs, wouldn't the Pentacle be older than Wicca? I will cover that in just a moment. Let me finish answering the Dusty Duds, and I will answer that question to the best of my abilities. And in fact, Pentacle is just a pentagram inside of a circle, and yes, it is older. In fact, one of a very popular group that used the pentagram before a lot of Wicca is a modern term, and we'll get into a lot of that too, even though it's based upon older terms. But they actually there were some mathematicians who would put a pentagram on their hand because of the mathematical precision with the pentagram and how it can be broken down into different formula for mathematics based upon the length and size of all of the lines that form up the pentagram itself. But anyway, we'll get into that in a second. Just bear with me. So for Norse and Germanic stuff, the Dusty Dud, and I'm sorry this is a long explanation, but I like to give a lot of background information. Like I said, I like to share my thoughts, share some sources, and give you as much as I can. So the way that I see it is Odin is not the main deity. In fact, Odin wasn't even necessarily honored or worshipped as much as Thor. Now, Thor was worshipped and honored so much due to the fact that he was a deity of the people. He protected Mithingard, Earth, and Asgard, the realm of the gods, because that was his big thing. They looked to him as the protector. Like, each one of them had different associations with them, but you see far more Mjolnir and symbols of Thor than you do of Odin. So the Norse and Scandinavian gods were based around raw forces of nature. Thor, his name, is basically the Thunderer. It's like the word for lightning and thunder is almost the exact same spelling almost as Thor. Odin is the mad one. He's the mad deity. Like, people don't even realize this, and this is what drives me nuts. If you read the sagas and Eddas, it's right there. And this is just what people wrote down. They could have written it down wrong. They could have remembered it wrong, right? There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. Odin actually brags about forcing himself on women. Yeah, the bad R word. Bragging about this to his son Thor, because he's in disguise on a ferry. And if you want, I can... I don't remember the name of the poem now. Damn it. I can look it up for you, though. But you can definitely look up this poem, and it's translated to English for you. He is bragging to Thor about how he forced himself on all these different women. Then there's another story about these farmers walking with their scythes, and Odin appears in disguise again, sharpens one of their scythes for them with this magic stone, and it's the sharpest it's ever been, and just glides through the grass like it's not even there. All the other farmers are jealous, and they want it, and they want their scythes sharpened too. So Odin throws it in the air and tells them to catch, and they're all fighting over it and kill each other, and they all die. And he just picks up the stone and keeps walking and smiles to himself. I guess I got a few more for Valhalla, for Valhall, for Ragnarok. A few more for Ragnarok. So getting sent off to Valhall, even though, I guess they sort of, in a way, died in battle. It's not really a battle, though. It's more of a little fight. The point is, though, Odin goes back and forth from being this giver of wisdom, but with reserve, and people try to venerate him as this noble and great and powerful deity, when in fact he was very selfish and out for himself. And he didn't do anything if it wasn't going to benefit himself. Like, the dude straight up hung himself and stabbed himself and learned how to write. That's how we get the runes, from him hanging himself from the branches of Yggdrasil. And you have him plucking out his eye to drink from the well of wisdom to get knowledge because he wants to know what's going to happen. He literally collects dead soldiers and forces them to fight day after day and get resurrected in the afterlife to continue to hone their skills for who knows how many thousands of years until Ragnarok actually comes, which is the twilight of the gods. So it's like everything in the story suggests he's all about himself, his power, and his own knowledge. He dresses as a woman and practices seidr, which is a feminine form of magic, because he wants to have all wisdom and all knowledge. But people don't look into this. They change and make him who he is. He's out for himself mostly. So I don't think that there is a main deity or a higher deity. And this whole reference to himself as the Allfather, I think that's him asserting his dominance. Thor has a father. He is Thor's father is Odin. Odin has a father too, Bor. He's actually referred to as Odin Borson because there's other deities. It's like he's part of a family tree. And he has had children with many different women. Valkyries are basically human women who are chosen to go and choose other slain. But then they're treated as deities. Like Freya is apparently a Valkyrie. So she's apparently a human who got elevated into being an Aesir. And in fact, people join and leave the Aesir clan all the time. Loki, who's now part of the Aesir, is a Jotun. He is actually one of the giants. So again, it suggests that they're all part of the same species. But like, who's doing what and how they're screwing over which person, or who's more powerful, or what they're doing. So I don't think you can put anyone at the top. And I would say the exact same thing is true of the Celtic type of stuff. Now here's the problem with a lot of the Celtic stuff. Celtic is a language group. Okay? There's a lot of different Celtic tribes all over the place during around the same time as the Germanic tribes. They were more a little bit to the south and to the west compared to the Germanic tribes. Germanic tribes were like up there near Poland and Germany and Russia, and eventually traveling, Norse, right? Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and eventually they went over and settled Iceland. Iceland's a settlement. Iceland is like the U.S. The people in Iceland weren't born and raised in Iceland. They traveled and settled there from Norway, and then later Sweden, Denmark, and a couple other Scandinavian countries as well. It's a settlement. But the Germanic regions, the Germanic tribes, that's one language group, and then you have the Celtic-speaking language groups, which include places today known as Ireland and Wales, France. So it's a lot of different regions. But yeah, even with the Celtic pantheon, they don't have a creation story, so we don't know how they were created, but they also have basically like a family tree. Now, what they called their spiritual deity type people, like in Norse Scandinavian, you have the Aesir, the Vanir, and the Jotnar. You have three main tribes. You also have three main tribes in some of the Celtic ones, one of the most popular ones being the Tuatha De Danann. Now, a lot of people think it's pronounced Tuatha De Danann, but it's actually Tua De Danann. And the Tuatha De Danann, there's actually, and I stumbled across this earlier, let me see if I can find it again. There was like three major groups. So basically Ireland, which is like named after a goddess, Ire. There was a name for Ireland before they came there, and they had these big monstrous creatures called the Fomorians, and three tribes, including the Tuatha De Danann, came there and conquered it. And here we go. So the Tuatha De Danann, the Tuatha De Dawain, and the Tuatha De Ermin. I don't know. I need to research this more, but I'll at least give you a reference to this. But there are other. That's not gonna let me share that with you. Okay, let me do it this way then. Fine. You want to be a pain in the butt? Let's be a pain in the butt. Let's force this to work. We'll force this to work this way. Okay. Let me hide my face. So here is right? So Danu. Tuatha De Danann means the children of Danu. But then there's these other three tribes as well. And all of them beat up the Fomorians, and they moved and came into what is now known as Ireland. So, yeah. So is there a main one? I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. I mean, there's the Dagda, there's Danu, but that's more like we're talking about with Odin, where it's more along the lines of these are the older parents more than it is the higher or more in charge or anything like that. So no, I don't think there is anyone in charge in any of those pantheons. So yeah, I think I remember a story of Odin wording a woman while Thor holds her down and watches. Okay, so in that story, Odin, in disguise as a ferryman, is bragging to Thor, who needs to get across on the ferry, but he won't pick him up because he starts insulting Thor. He brags to him about all the women he has taken by force. And Thor says that if I would have known, I would have held them down for you. So I don't know if there's a story of Thor actually holding him down, but he definitely offered to hold him down. So yeah. But people act like that never happened. Now, Alum Bristrick, your question. Are you still around? We can talk about the Pinnacle a little bit. Hopefully that answers your question, the Dusty Dud, to the best of my ability. Harbosk Yoth is the taunting contest. That might be it right there. Thank you, Brigadwell. That might be the one that we're talking about. And you know me, I like to get the Icelandic Old Norse spelling. Let's see if we can get a copy of the Edda. Here's one. Some myth poly. Yeah. So here is a link to it being written down. Who is the fellow yonder on the farther shore of the Sound? Yes, this is it. Ferryman spoke. What kind of a peasant is you that call o'er the bay? Thor spake. Ferry me over the Sound. I will feed thee therefore in the morn. Yeah, that's the one. This is the one. And of course, there's different versions of the translations. Water. Giant fell and dwelt in the isle. How won ye success with your women? Lively women we had, if they wise for us were. Wise were the women we had, if they kind for us were. For ropes of sand they would seek to wind, and the bottom to dig from the deepest dale, wiser than all. And there I slept by the sisters seven, and joyful great did I get from each. What Thor didst thou the while? Much lovecraft I wrought with them who ride by night, when I stole them by stealth from their husbands. A giant hard was Helbarth, methinks. His wand he gave me as a gift, and I stole his wits away. Thou'st repay good gifts with evil mind. The oak must have what it shaves from another, and such things each for himself. What Thor didst thou the while? Yeah, he's basically bragging about, taking these women who were married, no less. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. And the translation, the one I read, was Jackson Crawford's translation, which I have over here on the wall. So, and I listened to the audio version because the audio version comes with it too. But yeah, it's pretty brutal. It's definitely pretty brutal. I meant, is there a deity above Odin or the Dagda? Well, what do you mean by above? Because like I was saying, I mean, Odin has a father. Here, check this out. I mean, Odin wasn't even the first. I mean, I know I have this saved because, again, I like to save this. So beings. Where is the family tree one? There's the one I'm looking for. Here. And the same is true for both. So that's why I'm saying, like, what do you mean by above? Because it's more like their families and, yeah, here. So here's the Aesir, right? So you can find right here, here's Odin. So Odin, like I said, is Bor's son. So here's Bor. Bor and Besla are the parents of Odin. And Bor's parent, we have Buri. And Besla's parent, we have Bothorn. And Bothorn's parent is Ymir. Ymir is the oldest. So Ymir... So you have this story, right? And in this story, you have Gunungagap, which is a great void of nothingness. And you have Niflheim and Muspelheim, the land of fire and ice. And when they came together, they melted the ice and rivers ran, and out of it came a cow. And this cow, which I can't remember the cow's name, licked free Ymir, who was the first of the Jotnar. And out of Ymir's armpits came the other giants. So that's fun. And then, so you have all of these out of Ymir, which was like the first. Ymir was slain, and his body was turned into Mithengarðr, which is the earth. And his eyelashes became the boundary between this realm and the next, and his blood became the oceans. That's why it's so salty, it's his blood. And the bones was turned into the rocks and the stones. So it's like you have all this stuff that was created out of Ymir. And like I said, that I mean, Odin is pretty down far here, and his brothers Vili, Ve, and Odin are the three that slayed Ymir, which Ymir is technically his great-great-grandfather. Which again, this is why I'm telling you that many of these deities are kind of together. They're combined, man. They're like they're all related. I think they're like the same species. It's just different clans and tribes and stuff. And we can zoom out on this a little bit. I mean, there's a huge tree, right? So here's all the Vanir down here, which is like another clan or tribe, and then down here with Loki. But up here in this whole section for the Aesir, Ymir's listed with the Aesir, but he's a Jotnar. He's a Jotun. 100% is a Jotun. So, but that's why I'm like, I'm not really sure how to answer your question. He's not the oldest. Like, what makes him the highest? I mean, you have different tribes. Like I tell you right now, the chief of the Jotun doesn't respect or bow down to Odin. That's why there were so many wars and battles between them. And the same thing with the Vanir. Like the Vanir clan itself. Now, the Vanir and the Aesir seem to get along, and the Aesir seems like they are more powerful, but during Ragnarok, the Aesir are basically all slain. A lot of the Vanir do survive, supposedly, based upon the stories around Ragnarok. They survive, as well as some of the children of the Aesir, like Thor's children. His sons inherit Mjolnir, according to some of the legends around the Ragnarok. So, yeah, I don't know if Alum is still here or not. But if you ping me, we can get back to your pentacle question. So. Sorry, get off on these tangents, but this is what I like. I like interaction. I like questions, and I like doing my best to answer them and sharing some information. So if you have additional questions, let's continue to discuss and talk further. I know the live, there's a delay. So, like, I'm holding up my hand right now. Let's see when I see that in the live. Wow. That is a long delay, actually. Why is there such a delay in the live? What's being recorded? I still haven't held my hand up. It's like almost a full minute behind. Okay, well, instead of recording, and I'll mention whenever I see my hand go up over there, but instead of recording, like I said, if there's additional questions or comments, we can definitely continue in some of these conversations. I don't have all the answers. I just like looking things up and sharing what I do have. And if you have counter arguments or information, let's talk about it and share it, and I'll definitely look it up. I was actually debating talking about the Tuatha De Danann today as doing a video dedicated to them, just due to the fact that I feel like I've put a lot of focus on my videos and especially my TikToks and specifically Norse paganism due to the increased popularity of recent times into it. But I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I like to jump all over the place. So I don't want to just focus on the Norse paganism type stuff because that's not all I read about. And I do want to do some more information and digging into the Tuatha De Danann, amongst others, because I'm getting to the point now where, since I've focused so much recently on some of the Eddas and sagas and listening to some of the audiobooks from Jackson Crawford and watching other videos about it to answer questions and discuss things further, like why the runes are not really anything more than an alphabet, that they're I mean, I guess like a pantheism view above deities like Odin, and in polytheistic cultures did ancient people have the view? Ancient people have the view. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following what that question means. Like I said, I'm not really sure I'll answer it other than the fact that there were deities that were part of the pantheon that are older and have that view of pantheism. Unless I'm misunderstanding pantheism, that's just like having a pantheon of beings and stuff. Like a pantheon is a list of deities. Pantheism, yeah. Like I said, like... Yeah, I'm not really sure I get where you're going with the question. Is there a central higher deity, like in Norse, above Odin? Because, I mean, in the pantheon of the Norse pagan deities, Odin is kind of like the one in charge, and he's in charge based upon him enforcing his will and power. He's like the chieftain. Right now in the video, I'm now showing the screen where I'm showing Ymir. That is really bizarre. But if you're responding that quickly, maybe that's just a delayed live part, but that's not actually what's being seen over there. That's really bizarre. Yeah, it's like multiple minutes behind. I thought pantheism meant everything is a part of a universal power. I don't think so. So let's look up the official definition, right? Pantheism, a doctrine identifying the deity with the universe and its phenomenon. Belief in and worship of all gods, the worship of all gods. Let's go to Britannica.com. Pantheism, the doctrine that the universe conceived of as a whole is God, and controversially, that there is no God, but the combined substance, forces, and laws that are manifested in the existing universe. The cognate doctrine of pantheism asserts that God includes the universe as a part that not the whole of his being. Both pantheism and pantheism are terms of recent origin coined to describe certain views of the relationship between God and the world that are different from the traditional theism as reflected in the prefix pan, meaning all. Both of the terms. Oh, I see what you're saying. So is there a pantheistic view, is what you're asking, that something is greater than Odin? Yes. Because if you think about it, Odin is basically trying to obtain power because he doesn't have full control. And the Aesir themselves will grow old and die without the apples of Idun. So Idun grows these magic golden apples, they eat it, and they keep young. So they are mortal beings. They're not immortal, they don't live forever. And they can die. They supposedly are going to die in the Ragnarok. And there are other forces that they are contending with and are challenged by on a regular basis. So I don't know what would be considered greater. Like, even if you think of the three Norns, right? And I can't remember their name, but it's basically like fate, destiny, and something else. Norns, here they are. Uther, past. Verthandi, which is present. And Skuld, which is future. And the three Norns weave fates of all beings. And supposedly when the Aesir die, they're going to go to Hell anyway, which is overseen by Loki's daughter, Hel, for this of the same name. So it's like, is there a greater force above Odin? Yeah, Odin is just one being. So it's like, that's why it's also interesting too, because the way the Christians view their God is different than how, at least during the Viking era, people viewed Odin. Because I think Norse pagans today do not, like I said, they ignore a lot of the stories written down about Odin. Witch Wolf, I apologize for the delay. Recently, UFO stuff coming out in social. There was a mention to a tall whites species of aliens that supposedly looked very human, but larger and described as Viking-like. Wonder if there is a connection. I've not seen anything like that. Where did you see mention of this UFO stuff? Because I've not heard anything of that at all. Tall white aliens, who are they and what do they look like? Tall white aliens are often confused with Nordic aliens. According to personal accounts, the tall white aliens are not benevolent beings and are believed to have a hidden agenda. Take a moment to compare a couple descriptions from separate eyewitnesses. I don't like to criticize people for their beliefs, but this feels very conspiracy theory like. That's not to say that there's no such thing as UFOs or aliens and whatnot. I have trouble wrapping my head around it. I feel like there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that will share information that's unverifiable. And to me, at least, not having more evidence. I mean, there could be cover-ups. I get that, and I acknowledge that. Just because I have not seen it or witnessed it does not mean it does not exist or it's not real. However, there seems to be enough of the claimed UFO sightings and alien sightings that I question them. So I don't know if stuff like that exists. Could it be connected? Yes. I think that's actually where the fictional Marvel comics got their idea. Is the idea that what if they were aliens from another planet and we just viewed them as divine beings? You have the same thing happening in the fictional movie Stargate, where the ancient Egyptian deities are in fact aliens from another realm. And they use the Stargate in order to traverse the universe more quickly to get back to our world, which they were using for mining materials in that particular movie. But it gives the idea of if there were alien beings that ancient people, and they visited them, they might view them and deify them. That is definitely a potential connection, Witch Wolf. And I'm sorry, the Dusty Dud, if I didn't really get to answer your question precisely with the way you're looking for it, but if I am understanding it, hopefully that answers it a little bit better for you. Yeah. Odin, or any of the deities in Norse Scandinavian stories, none of them are all powerful. And there seems to be something greater than themselves. And again, we don't really know a lot about them. This is stuff that people wrote down. Like, what is different about people today versus people back then? And I bring this up with any religion or spirituality. What makes the first people who created these religions so special? Why were they able to interact with some being in some way that gave them better? You answered it. Thanks. Cool, 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 cool. Yeah, I just wanted to... I didn't want to go on unless I had the opportunity to answer it for you to the best of my ability. So, yeah, I missed the part where I held my hand up in my little preview on the left-handed window here, but hopefully you're all getting it. So, anyway, I think we're hitting about the hour mark. I'm trying to keep these lives on the shorter side, just due to the fact that I don't know how many people are going to go back and watch a full hour of just me chatting. But I appreciate everyone who comes in and hangs out, and I hope that you're enjoying these lives. I do want to try to do them more often. I want to try to do them weekly if I can. I am going to start focusing on some shorts some more, and I do want to go back to making videos. I've just been distracted with video games, mostly. I've been gaming a lot lately because I do enjoy video games a lot. And I definitely plan on playing some Baldur's Gate 3 and some of the demo stuff. I would agree with you on the conspiracy theory viewpoint. From a very objective point of view, I believe the truth lies somewhere between conspiracy theory and historical storytelling. I could see that. And I that's why I try my best not to fully discount things. Because just because we end up having something that everyone says is bullshit doesn't make it bullshit, right? Someone not believing it or having enough evidence doesn't mean it's non-existent, period. But in the same breath, it is also possible to observe something that is 100% natural and real, not know what it is, and make up stories for it. More recent example, my wife told me to come outside and look at the sky, and I was like, what? And there was a long, thin string of these little lights, and they were like separated, but they were all following each other very closely, flying through the air. It was the creepiest thing I've ever seen. So, of course, I looked it up online to find out what it was. Apparently, there's this satellite system with the satellites that orbit, and sometimes you'll see them in the night sky. I had never seen them before. I had no idea what they were. So, from my observational standpoint, if I was to tell other people what I saw in the sky, it could be misconstrued as something else, but it was, in fact, something real, physically seen, that I have observed. I think the problem comes down to some people are either hallucinating or making things up, and trying to separate out fact from fiction can be trying at times. And when it comes to aliens, I tend to get a little bit on the nervous side, especially when I start hearing people about, oh, I was abducted and here are my half alien children and pictures of them that I drew. And I get a little, okay, that's a little far out there for me. Like I said, I don't want to criticize people for their beliefs, because what's the difference between believing in aliens or a deity of any form from any religion? I mean, there's no proof in either case, or at least most people don't seem to have it. And if there was some sort of big threat, I could see the government hiding up things, right? I don't want to get too much into the COVIV, virus of unspecified origin, but there's a lot of conspiracy theories about things behind that. Right now supposedly we have fires in Canada. I don't know, man. The smoke coming down here, outside, getting headaches and migraines, smells like chemicals. Does not smell like burning wood. And it's all over. So it's like, there's a lot of questionable stuff. You know, how much do we really know? Life happens. Hello, Purple Magister. Welcome. Life does happen. What would you say you're a hard or soft polytheist? I think he is animist. Hard or soft? So how would you define hard versus soft? So my personal views on spirituality are constantly changing based upon the more information I get. I don't like to put myself into a box. It's definitely a personal experience, and I change my mind constantly. As far as being an animist, and Alam, you are still here, so let's talk about the pentagram before I end the live. Yes, animism is one form of a larger group of beliefs that I personally hold. Above all, I consider myself eclectic, but I do consider myself to be very animistic as well as monistic leaning, and I definitely consider myself a polytheist. Yes. So I would think that's accurate. But as far as hard versus soft, I don't know what you mean by hard versus soft. Maybe if I explain how I view polytheism myself through my own lens. So I believe and this is my beliefs as of today. I believe that there is a universal energy that is everything. There's no separation between you and me right now. Every single one of you, we're all connected. We're all literally part of the same essence, right? And it's beyond the earth. The earth is all part of it too. Like, there's literally no separation. The entire earth and the universe and the galaxy, it's all connected. I believe that there is a will to a degree, or a mind, so to speak, in a way, of all of this. The Force in Star Wars, if you will, that I call the divine. I call it divinity. And I believe our attempts to contact and interact with divinity is why and how it manifests into different spiritualities and religions. At the heart of it, I believe all religions and spirituality are the exact same. They're just giving different nicknames for the same phenomenon that they cannot explain or describe. I believe all of the stories and cultural stuff is just different ways of interacting and viewing something we're never going to fully understand. I have a video up on my YouTube channel here. If you look up just look up Mountain Theory, and that kind of describes how I think about religion as a whole. Do I feel like there are individual beings? I feel like there are aspects of this divinity. I definitely feel like there are masculine and feminine forces, which is why I think there's a great mother and a great father. I definitely feel like men are male personifications of the masculine forces of the universe, just like women are female manifestations of the feminine forces of the universe. As far as Odin and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, I do. I mean, I have a very, very close personal relationship with divinity. For Brigid has always meant a lot to me. I keep picture up of one of my favorite artist renderings of what Brigid may or may not manifest as. So yeah, for me, yeah, I would say I'm still polytheistic. I've heard hard polytheism as taking the stories of deities literal, and soft as seeing the stories and metaphors or gods as personifications of nature. Then soft. I would be a soft polytheist based upon those definitions. I do not believe humans have the ability to 100% perceive what they see. So when you look at any of the stories in the sagas and the Eddas, if you look at any of the stories from mythologies, cultural traditions, this is humankind's attempt to write down what they have observed, experienced, or made up to control others. So I do not think you can take any of them as fact. This is why I'm so big on where did that come from? I think people back in the day in tribal and clan days went out in the nature, observed things, and they shared it with others. That's what I try to do. I try to experience life. That's why I have no problem with any religion or spirituality unless you target other people. If you are not harming other individuals and you're not pushing your beliefs on them, I don't care what belief system you have. You can do what you want. Just do not harm people and do not force your beliefs. That's all I ask. Pentagram, pentacle. Let's talk about that real quick. Why Wiccanans? So I don't know why you have the apostrophe. That might have been a typo. Oh, okay, yeah, that's a typo. Why are they calling pentacle as theirs? Wouldn't the pentacle be older than Wicca? Yes, it's 100% older. So my problem with the general group of Wicca and Wiccans is they have a tendency to claim other things as their own. I had people try to claim the Scandinavian Elder Futhark, which is actually older than Scandinavian. It's actually Proto-Germanic script. The Elder Futhark that everyone used for divination, I've heard people call witches' runes. Tarot cards, witches' tarot cards. And Wiccan tarot cards. Wiccan, and even the term witch. Oh, witches and Wiccans, they try to like bring them together. A pentacle with a pentagram and a circle, star pointed upwards, people have associated with modern Wicca because a lot of people wore that. So that's why they've claimed the pentacle as their own. But it is a much older symbol. It is symbolic of any star-shaped symbol or pentagram that we've seen throughout society and history and civilization. As I mentioned, with the mathematicians would meet in secret and they would have the pentagram on their hand to signify to each other that they were both mathematicians, because they were studying sciences that were considered to be blasphemous. That's the interesting thing. Science back in the day was treated by some cultures and societies as just as bad as some Christians treat anyone who's not Christian today. Druids use it too. I wouldn't be surprised. It's everywhere in nature. Check out my, and I'm going to keep telling you to check out my other videos. Support my channel. Watch my stuff. It's free information. I've got a video on apple magic where if you cut an apple in half, it has a star in the middle. The seeds form a pentagram. There is star fruit, star fish. Like, this symbol is part of nature. So yeah, it's been used by tons of societies throughout history. So it's 100% way older. So it's one, and that's the thing though, with Wicca, a lot of the stuff that they've pieced together, Wicca is an eclectic modern path where they just blend stuff together on what they could find. And I grew up with it, you know, in the 90s, when I started getting into this stuff, early 90s, everyone talked about Wicca, and everything was Wiccan. Everything was Wiccan, even though it wasn't. Pentagram is an example of it, but, you know, Wiccan Reed and Wiccan Pentagram and Wiccan Tarot and Wiccan Runes and Wiccan Spell Bags and smudging. Holy crap, dude. Smudging has nothing to do with paganism unless you want to consider indigenous traditions pagan. They're not even smudging the way that a lot of the indigenous tribes would do it, but white sage and stuff, and I have a video on that too. White sage is an indigenous cultural tradition, and it's not saying you can't use it. I'm not telling people not to use other stuff, but there was a lot of confusion where people just saw and they built it and they labeled it all under one label. And I don't think it was the original people who started constructing Wicca today. I think it was people were learning out of books, didn't know what they were doing, and started sharing false information and printing their own books. Lady Sheba has a Book of Shadows. It is her Coven's Book of Shadows. She printed under her own name. She took Coven secrets and printed it for the public. So that's why I think you hear Wiccans claim the pentagram. So it's not that pentacle. It's not that the pentacle is a Wiccan symbol, but there is a version of the pentacle that is associated with Wicca. Therefore, they have their own version of it. Does that make sense? So in a way, they do have a right to it, because it's what a large group of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of modern Wiccans have chose to symbolize their personal path. It would be no different than the Catholics claiming the cross. The Catholics are not the only ones that use the cross, but it's still a Catholic cross. See what I'm saying? Or the Celtic cross that has a circle behind the cross. So it's like, again, one tradition and one way of representing it with a symbol. Thank you for taking a few minutes to look into it. Absolutely, Witch Wolf. Like I said, I don't like to discount things. It might not be something that I personally believe in or buy into with the whole aliens and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean I'm going to completely dismiss it. I mean, I'm literally talking to you all about spirituality and stuff that is based upon blind faith and belief, period. It would be very hypocritical to discount one and not the other. I find great frustration when I hear spiritual people say their spirituality is the only one and they dismiss all other ones. And that's fine if you believe that. I'm not telling you can't. But I think it's very inconsistent. Either you have blind faith and belief or you don't. And again, all religion is man-made. I don't buy this whole concept of any being so powerful and so superior that you can write its intent in human words. Hell, let's talk about the Druids, even though Druids is a modern term. Druids pass things by word of mouth because you couldn't write it down, because you lose the meaning when you write stuff down. I also feel more like a soft polytheist, but then I think if the stories are man-made, ideas, personification of nature, what am I believing in? What do you think? So, as I'd mentioned, I kind of view it as soft polytheism myself based upon the two definitions that you provided. what is it that drove them to believe what they believed to begin with? What were they really trying to connect with? I try to go through the process of discovering where things might have come from and then going out there and trying to experience it for myself. Mark my words, regardless of what you call it, I believe, personally, I'm not selling this as fact, this is UPG. I personally believe that there is something that I have called divinity, and your ability to interact with and experience divinity is a personal thing, and you will get an answer. If you want to call it God, if you want to call it Odin, if you want to call it Goddess, if you want to call it Brigid, if you want to call it anything you want to call it, you can call it the flying spaghetti monster. There is something you are connecting with. What it is and how it's connected, I believe you're going to know deep down. That's just my personal belief. I believe deep down you can feel what fits and what works and what's right. So, and this is why I like to tap back in the culture, what your family did. When I go and I research stuff that has to do with Scandinavia or Ireland or things, like, I'm a mutt. I'm 100% a mutt. I've got 5 different ethnic groups in me. And I will say they're 5 different ethnic groups because they're so close, like within a couple generations. I was born and raised in America. I'm proud to be an American, but like I said, my mom was born in Iceland. Most of my family came here within 2 or 3 generations. One branch I might be able to trace back a little bit further that was here for a little bit while, but everyone else came over from different countries. So when I go and research what that group, that cultural family might have done, it feels like coming home. It feels like connecting with my family. But again, you were talking about the observations of humans. So how can you learn to observe and experience yourself? What is it about the raw core nature of neo-paganism that drew you? What turned you off based upon monotheism? So what did I personally not like about monotheism? I don't believe that humans have the ability. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, then God is not all good, right? There's this old saying, and I can look it up for you, but basically, if God is all-powerful and all-knowing, then he doesn't care. And if he does care, he is not all-powerful and all-knowing, because it's this whole paradox of why evil exists and everything like that. And if God, why would God damn us if God knows everything, knows how he can convert us and everything, because we have free will? Then why would he make free will that allows people to hurt themselves? Like, literally, it's set up to be destroyed. So do not believe in the Christianized God. And then if you go back through Christianity and where it came from, you have Yahweh, Jehovah, and Jehovah had a wife, Ashera. So it's like, if you go back far enough, you realize that it was how it was constructed into modern times. So that, I reject that ideology for me personally. If you believe in it, it's fine. I'm not criticizing you for being Christian. It's not for me. Then if you look at the Bible has been translated. As somebody who studies different languages and can speak phrases and words in at least 5 different languages, not fluent, I understand that when you translate words, you lose meaning. Not to mention the fact that the person, you can lose meaning. Take the word love. Now explain to me what love is. You can't feel it. You can't touch it. Well, I mean, you can feel it in a sense, but you can't tangibly touch it and feel it. Love means something different to each person. And then you have circumstances of what love is. Love for your child, love for food, love for a parent, love for a spouse. So it's like words lose. You cannot take divinity and put it into human words. It takes away from the divine power, in my opinion. So I reject the Bible. I reject the image. It doesn't work for me. The church group, I like the whole community and organization. That makes sense to me. So when I went to look, well, what were they trying to seek? I'm trying to find my place in the world. I'm trying to find this peaceful inner harmony and how I exist within the greater scheme of existence itself. So when I go outside and I see the magic of growing plants, or if I go outside and put an herb garden, we have herbs in the back, or if we have like food that we're growing like tomatoes, to see this plant from a seed grow and sprout these little tiny flowers that spread and turn into this tiny little green sphere that grows and turns red, and I can pluck it off, eat it, and get nutrients. That experience is magical to me. Learning how to work with that, seeing the way a dog interacts and the feelings it has in its eyes and the connection to checking on us or, interacting with us or playing with us, that interaction with animals and nature is, to me, what I've been seeking and looking for. So by going out and experiencing it, I don't need to call these particular elements of growing, caring, and nurturing by specific deity names. Now I will associate it with certain names based upon readings and things that I've learned. But that's what I'm seeking. That's why I can't answer for everyone. You got to find out what works for you. So even though you're saying that you feel like you're a soft polytheist as well, these stories can teach you lessons. What sort of lessons do they teach you? What is it that that culture looked at when they wrote that story down? I quote the Bible sometimes. With faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. You can fish for a man and feed him for a day, or teach him to fish and feed him for a lifetime. There are nuggets of wisdom inside general philosophy and thinking as human beings. So if you study those cultures and what they meant when they wrote those items down and restudy them, that's why so I've got a friend, he's a Baptist, he's a Southern Baptist, very devout. He reads the Bible all the time. And I actually asked them before why they reread the Bible so many times. They reread it because every time that they reread it, they learn something new, even though it's the same passage. And I think you can treat that all of these stories and stuff the same way. All the Eddas and sagas and stories and myths, you can reread them and learn something and glean something new from getting inspiration from other people. Because you got to remember, people who wrote this stuff down wrote it down for at least one of two reasons. There's probably many reasons they could have written it down, but either to control other people. Well, what are they trying to control? Are they trying to teach you self-control? Or that they wrote it down for the poetic piece of sharing what they felt in the moment of obtaining the spiritual enlightenment or acknowledgement of things. So that's my 2 cents, the Dusty Dud. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. That's the way I approach it. Yeah, I saw it. Thanks for explaining. Yeah, no problem. Merry Meat. Hey, Pagan Coffee Talk. Good to see you. Pagan Coffee Talk also does YouTube videos, by the way. You should definitely check them out. They have podcasts that they do, and they've actually had some really cool stuff. In fact, Pagan Coffee Talk had a really, really, really cool analogy that I still remember and I still use even now, Pagan Coffee Talk, where they were talking about making a roast, and that this mother was teaching her daughter to cut the ends off the roast because that's how you have to do it. That's the way she learned how to do it. And the daughter asked why. So the mother went back to her mother to find out, why do we cut? Because she didn't know. She just did it because that's how she was taught. Turns out that her mother taught her that because the pan she had was too small to fit the roast in, so she'd cut the ends off just so it would fit. And that kind of that actually directly ties into what I'm talking about. Why did they write it down? Go back to the original reason and make up your own mind for it. I like to do things with purpose. If I'm doing something, let's say you're celebrating a holiday or seasonal festival. It doesn't matter. Let's take Christmas. What else is around Christmas time? Dongze, which is Chinese. You also have Yol, which is Icelandic. You also have Yule, winter solstice. So there's a couple seasonal holidays. What are you doing and why are you doing it? Well, let's look at a few things. Typically in the northern hemisphere, it's very cold, so you're lighting fires to keep yourself warm. You're cooking food over a fire because you want warm food when it's cold, and you're huddling with family and staying in a nice warm area. So it's about survival, it's about being with family, and it's about consuming and keeping yourself well fed through the winter. So do that with purpose. Doesn't matter if it's in the name of Christ, or if it's in the name of Odin, or if it's it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What does matter is there a purpose behind you doing it now? Can you glean from studying any of these cultures something that can be meaningful to you and your daily practice? Yes, I really don't like when a religion says there's only one. Ugh. Same. It's like we don't know. And again, I'm not trying to criticize. Maybe there is only one. But you have to make that determination for yourself. Find out what works for you. There is way more within the universe than the human brain can understand. Every religion and belief is just a human attempt to explain something they literally can't fully understand. Yes, 100% agree with you. 100%. Seriously, go check out my mountain theory video. You guys would love it. It's right along the lines of what we're talking about. Yeah, the Canaanites, I think Yahweh was the son of El and Asherah before the Old Testament narrative. Right. Lol. Lol, because I brought up the roast thing again. Dude, it was such a it was beautifully done. Like seriously, like check if you want actually the podcast that you have where you talked about that. Pagan Coffee Talk asked me to review their podcast, and I did. I listened to it. It was very enjoyable. And if you want to listen to something without actually having to have a visual interaction, definitely check out Pagan Coffee Talk. Great topics. Great. Then I got gonna listen Pagan Coffee Talk podcast. I put in bookmarks. Good. Actually, next time I do a live, tell me what you think, or in my community tab. I would love to hear. Like I said, it's definitely worth listening to. I love hearing different people's opinions. Good points, Blaze. That makes sense. Right. And like I said, this is just my opinion. I can't say that enough. UPG. And again, as a reminder, my shoulder is bothering me because of the way I'm sitting. Oh. I also been doing a lot of stick work in martial arts, so. Oh. Let's stretch. There we go. We'll stretch like that. Yeah, I've got a Doctor Strange shirt on today, so we got Doctor Strange and Wong. Anyway. What was I saying? I was saying something. Oh, yeah. UPG. So if you don't know what UPG is, and I will repeat this multiple times because it's a very important term if you're into this new age stuff. UPG stands for Unverified Personal Gnosis, which means your own personal experience. And so many pagans, heathens, spiritual folk use UPG, and there's nothing wrong with it. What bothers me is when people use UPG and they try to sell it as fact. Don't tell other people it's fact when it's your own take on it. Don't do that. It's a disservice to the community, and quite frankly, it pisses me off. So I will tell you, UPG, you need to take care of yourself. I know. Like I said, I just think I overdid it. It's like right here in my front of my shoulder here. It's not my rotator cuff. I got checked out. It's just, it gets stiff and sore. My classes last for about an hour and a half. And we're doing what's called Belinta walk, where it's like you have two short sticks about, I can't fit it on here. Anyway, I don't have my sticks in here. They're in the other room. But a little bit longer than this. And this is a back scratcher. And after an hour and a half of doing it 2 days a week, it works its way. So if I'm sitting on my shoulder, like leaning, and it's pushing my shoulder up, or I'm sitting at my desk too long, my arm starts going a little numb. So I just got to stretch out and move a little bit after my live. I do Twitch, which is a video game streaming thing. So I streamed a video game this morning for about an hour and a half. That's usually why I do it about 2, because Saturday is my streaming day for Twitch. And then I started streaming here. I've been sitting, I guess, for almost 3 hours. I got up to let the dogs out like once or twice during the streams, but definitely need to go stretch my legs and get some blood moving, not just sit all day. But yeah, on that note, what else we got? I'll end the live when we run out of topics, but like I said, I figured the unplanned lives is just like, whatever comes to mind. And if I don't have an answer, I'll let you know. Do you know some animism forums which are open? I do not. I am part of a forum group where I have my own group. If you want to check it out, let me send the link here, because I think I have like a finder's link. So if you click my link, it shows them that I'm actively trying to grow the community. How do I get my finder's link? I might still have it saved in my Discord. Links. Let's hope this still works. Is this a good updated link here? Nope, that link doesn't work anymore, so I need a new one. But there's probably some stuff dealing with animism on here somewhere, but live stream recordings, that's interesting. Personal settings, dark mode, which they finally added. I'll have to get a new link because the other one I have is an old one, which apparently doesn't work anymore. Ah, invite, there we go. Referral. Man, I have no referrals. Copy link. So if you want to check out a forum group, click my link. Let me edit it over here too. Yeah, it's a new one, of course. So if anyone was clicking my link, it wasn't working. But it's called Pagan Space. It's the only forum I'm really part of besides for Obod's forum, but you have to be a member of Obod in order to get onto there. Great, then I'm going to have to listen to Pagan Coffee Talk. I need to take care of yourself. Do you know some animist forums which are open? I agree with all of your points. Explaining all of that to someone who just thinks they're right and everyone else is wrong, I've come to reduce that explanation to them just be a good human. Pretty much. I've met too many people who think they have all the answers, and I've tried to counter, like Christians and pagans are the ones I argue with the most. So in the pagan community, you have your self-righteous know-it-alls who act like they have all the answers because they read it somewhere. So they have all the secret answers. And when you question them, it was passed by word of mouth. So it's hearsay and you can't confirm it. So what good does that do me? Why do I want to trust your source as being the best know-it-all source? Now, I also know a lot of pagans who like, well, that's the way my group does it, or that's the way I understand it. Ah, respect. Okay, I'll buy that. I'll bite. Cool. And then same thing with Christians. I've met Christians before that, you know, find what you want. My dad's mom, she, as far as I knew, she was Roman Catholic because that's the way my dad was raised. And I told her in the last, and I've shared this story before, I'm going to share it again. I told her towards the end of her life, I don't know if it was like the last year before she passed, I told her that I wasn't Roman Catholic anymore. And I hadn't been for years. I don't remember how old I was. I was definitely, I don't know, I think I was in my 20s, and I turned away from Roman Catholicism when I could officially do it at 18, but I started looking elsewhere when I was about 13. And when I told her that, she smiled at me. And she said, the most important thing is to have belief in something. So you have individuals who are even Christians who realize that they don't have all the answers. Because my big counter for a lot of the Christians were, how do you know? And who are you to limit God's power? If God is all powerful, who are you to say he has the ability to show himself as a goddess or multiple gods? If God's all powerful, why can't he? That's why I don't like the term God to refer to what I call divinity, because I don't think divinity is a male, masculine force. And I personally don't feel like the church and the Bible are the way to go through it. That's the big argument in Christianity. The two big camps of one camp swears by the Bible. You have to follow the Bible to a T. Then the other camp says the church has all the power and you have to follow through the church. So one group's like, study the Bible. You don't need the church. Everyone's like, no, you need the church because we have all the answers. Those are like the two big camps in Christianity. And it's like, so who's right? They both believe in the same God and deity. There's a YouTube video somewhere around here. It breaks down like all the different denominations of each of these big groups with the church or with the Bible. And you get like 60 plus denominations, all believing supposedly the same thing. Why are we arguing about it, people? Just believe and move on. And you want to find out about some pagan, quote unquote, pagan practices or things that would fit perfectly with paganism? You go to the freaking Appalachian Christians. Besides for saying God, they don't know Bible, no church. They just worship God out in the land. Their connection with the land. Holy crap! Talk about speaking to me. That type of stuff that they do, freaking beautiful. These freaking folk traditions that are passed down through the family. That's the thing. You'd be surprised how much your family probably does that feels right to you if you took the time to look into it. But again, that's just my 2 cents. No problem. Thanks for sharing. I was brought up Christian, but found out I was doing paganism, so I did unpopular thing called myself pagan Christian. Oh man, did I start a thing in the form of a storm wasn't liked by no one. So when I was younger, I got mad when I heard about people like you. Because I'm like, oh, you can't be pagan and Christian, or you can't be a Christian witch. That's not possible. They contradict each other. As I've gotten older, I realize now how much of an idiot I was. Why can't you? Why can't you be you and do your own thing? Like, at the end of the day, isn't it just about the acceptance of what is and choosing names that call to you the most? Like, why do you really need to, like, die on that sword? I mean, it's all beliefs anyway. None of it's, like, provable. Okay, you're a Christian. Well, where's God? Point to him right now. Call him down right now. Oh, you can't? It's all just theology and blind faith and belief? Okay. Oh, you're pagan? Okay. Where are your gods and goddesses at right now? Point to them. Call them down right now. Oh, you can't? It's all theology, blind faith, and belief? Okay. Oh, you're spiritual and you don't believe in any being. Okay, so where's the proof of whatever power that created all things, or why do we exist? You know, you don't have that answer. Yeah, it's all belief. We're all humans. We're all people. It's okay. So you want to take your own approach to it? Go for it. I fully 100% support now being a mix, an eclectic blend of different paths and spiritualities. And you might find some hardcore people in Christianity that get mad at you, like, you have to follow the Bible, you have to follow the church, and if you're not doing that, well, you're non-denominational. Shut up. You got no right to tell me how to follow my belief. I think as humans, I really believe we should inspire one another. And that's it. Try to help each other find the answers, but we have to find them for ourselves, you know? The teacher can show you the door, but you must walk through it. They can't do the work for you. But yeah, I learned some good things when I was raised Roman Catholic. When I was 13 is when it started, and I was just like, it didn't feel right to me anymore. It wasn't the path for me. That doesn't mean it's not the right path for others. I would 100% advise someone to find Christianity if that's what they need in their life, if it feels right for them. But at the end of the day, I say that so much. If it doesn't feel right anymore, I would say find the answers within. I don't think we need anything to be spiritual other than our own conviction, our own exploration, and our own experience. We don't know what anything is. I've made this argument before with trees. Tree is just the English word for it. There's many different types of species of trees too, and different ages on the tree as well. Calling it a tree doesn't change what it is. If people are living in different areas, being part of different spiritual paths, being in different lives, you can't tell them to go out back and to cut down the tree and then you'll have enough wood to stay warm and burn by the fire. What if they don't have trees around them at all? What if the trees they burn would be toxic with the fumes? What if the trees are too small? What if the trees are like pine needles and it causes too much smoke? You don't know the circumstances that other people are going through or what they're experiencing. People need to observe their own environment and determine what needs to be done for them. And instead of telling them to go cut down a tree and do this because that's what you would do in your own backyard, instead explain to them what you are doing. You are finding a source of warmth because you live in a cold area. Maybe they live in a tropic area. Maybe they don't need a fire. Maybe that's not what they need. They need a comfortable environment. So maybe they need to see what it is you are doing and the ultimate goal of those actions, and then find the own actions for themselves to accomplish the same thing. But what do I know? I'm just a 41-year-old gaming geek who talks to a camera on his computer on YouTube, so I don't have any answers, you know? Yep, live and let live. 100%. 100%. I agree. So, yeah, at some point I'm debating making a series on how to do actual magic. I talk about it a lot. I say it's a personal thing, but I don't really go into the stuff. And the reason I don't do that is I don't think there's anything that's advantageous about mimicking what other people do. I'll give you a spell right now. And I don't remember where I learned it from. So this is UPG. I don't know if this has any historical significance, but I can find historical significance with it now that I've done more research on it. If someone is sending negative intent towards you, you can call this a curse or whatever you want. One way to get rid of the curse or to reflect it or reject it is to take a traditional silverback mirror and to set it up in a dark room with a black candle and to light the candle. And when you're lighting the candle, you chant 3 times. Black, black, send the evil back. While focusing on rejecting and repelling any negative or harmful things coming at you. Now, 2 caveats with this. 1, make sure the black candle is short, that it can burn out in a reasonable length of time. You don't want something burning for days. 2, you cannot put this in a dark room that you can walk away from and have the candle fall down and burn down your house. So if you have a bathroom and a bathtub, or if you surround the candle in water, so if it did fall over, you have to think of those things. Now, just doing that is going to have no meaning. Why? Why is it working? What is the purpose behind doing this? Mirrors reflect images, but it reflects them in reverse. So if you are the target reflecting back onto the target, sending it back onto itself. That's one reason. Traditional silverback mirror, because there is purity in the color silver. There's also magical intent and purposes behind the color silver. Silver is also typically associated with the moon and the goddess. Typically with feminine vibrational energy, you have the mothering, comforting, nurturing aspect of that, which is one reason, potentially, why the mirror might have its effects. In fact, one of the legends and myths behind vampires not casting a reflection is because of the purity of the silver cannot reflect such evilness as the vampire is. Yes, vampires are evil, even though in modern pop culture they have changed how they're done. The candle, what's the whole point of burning with the candle? So the candle is purification and flame. The color black absorbs light. When you're looking at black, you're looking at the absence of color, because when we see through light. We see light reflecting off of things. And typically the color you see is the color it's not. So if you look at the color red, it is reflecting everything but the spectrum of light of red. Red is reflecting back to your eye. Everything else is being absorbed. That's why if you have white, which reflects all the colors, it's cool in the sun, where black is hot because it's absorbing all that light and that heat. So by putting up the black candle and putting the intent of the negativity there, the theory is that all that negative energy that's coming towards you is then sucked into the candle, and you have it in a black room, so there's no influence or outside effects, that it's drawing into the candle, and the candle is burning and purifying what's being absorbed into it, and the mirror is there to bounce back everything that's coming at the candle so it sees it and reflects it back. Also taking the negative curse thing and flipping it in the mirror to be positive instead, so there's positive in the room, so you have the mirror doing its reversal effect of changing with the purity of silver and the candle burning down. Now, if you don't do magic or spirituality at all, you might be like, wow, this idiot really wants to set up a candle and set it on fire in front of a mirror. What is that going to do? On the flip side, maybe you do spirituality and your jaw just hit the floor. This is why I don't necessarily like to do that, because if you don't understand the purpose and meaning behind it, you're doing a couple disservices to yourself. The first disservice that you're doing is you're just going through the motions, and it's not going to have the intent and need. There's also a lot of people who believe, there's actually, so Ed Fitch wrote a book called A Grimoire of Shadows, which I have right there on the shelf. And in there, he has the 4 words of the Magus. In order to know, we must, let's see. To know, to dare, to will, to keep silent are the 4 words of the Magus. In order to know, we must dare. In order to dare, we must will. We must will to possess empire. To reign, we must keep silent. And they say that you shouldn't share spells because you are sharing power. So you having something in your toolbox that others can't use is effective, supposedly. But at the end of the day, it's like water is wet. If you're understanding the principles and concepts behind spellcraft and magic and ritual, anyone who studies that stuff is going to understand the same things. So do you need to keep silent about it? It's kind of up to you. Some people believe that you need to. So if I did a series on magic, it would be a breakdown of why you do the choices you do. Because I truly believe that the spell you craft for the situation is more powerful than the spell you copy from someone else or write down because it was written on the internet. If you find out the why behind it, I think it is more beneficial to write a custom spell in every scenario where you genuinely feel you need one. I also don't think there's a difference between spellcraft and prayer. When a Christian prays to God, it is 100% magic, and it is 100% a spell. You are appealing to divine forces to intervene in your life through word and intent. A prayer is a spell. And Christians don't want to hear that, but it's true. That was beautiful. Thank you, Brigadwell. I appreciate that. Smoke of the wind. Message retracted. Okay, sorry. So, well, like I said, I mean, and that's, of course, is one method. There's a whole bunch of different things that can be done. There's shielding, there's warding, there's all sorts of things. Misspelling? No worries. But if folks would be interested in something like that, I could put something like that together. But I would talk about what and why. And here's the thing at the end of the day. When it comes to... There's the end of the day thing again. I like to say everything is at the end of the day. When it comes to magic and spirituality, when it comes to ritualistic forms, so you have what's called sympathetic magic. Sympathetic magic is where you are doing something in a fashion to draw in forces, right? If you want to get sympathy from someone, you do things outwardly that show you need sympathy. So sympathy magic is you are doing actions and stuff to draw in particular forces. So if you're doing something, again, with the candle in the mirror for reflection, so you're doing things to draw on the sympathetic forces to do what is needed. Does it work? Maybe not. But again, why do people pray? Why do people say you should put up a horseshoe upward instead of downward because it keeps the luck in? Is that really working? It doesn't matter if it is or isn't technically. It is a belief that it does, and it's the belief behind it that gives it a little oomph, in my opinion. And it comes down to whether or not it works, comes down to whether or not you believe magic is possible. Maybe it does nothing. Maybe it does. Do you think that rituals are effective because of the details encompassing the ritual itself, or it's only to bring someone into the mind space to bring out their intentions? Oh, I love that question. Yes. And I say yes is a little joke that I do with my wife. When she asks a question, this or that, and I say yes, I'm referring yes for both without being clear, because there's truth to both of those things. In my personal viewpoints, I do believe that rituals put you in the mind space. One, I think that part is undeniably true. The other aspect of what you say, the details, I'm on the fence about. I still lean to yes, but I'm on the fence about it because I'm not sure how much is actually needed. Let me give you an example. I don't do many spells at all, and I don't do them for two reasons. One, I'm not sure if they're needed. I think intent and words mean more than spells, in my opinion. Crafting of the spells, most of the information I have is from Llewellyn books, speaking with others, or experimenting on my own. So I'm not sure of the validity of the information I'm using. Why does the color black used for absorbing negative energy? Well, I just described the light thing. That doesn't mean it's true. I mean, I could take a candle and rub it on someone who's in a bad mood. Is it going to make their bad mood go away? No. Or maybe it will. Okay, was it the candle, or it's because I wanted to cheer them up and me rubbing a candle on them was funny and made them laugh? You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a question there. And it comes again down to the fact of blind faith and belief. We don't know. And intentions are the power behind the spell, not the details of color or candle and whatnot. Yes, but I think that's why it's important to research and become invested when you are crafting your own spell or magic work, that you're doing an effort to add something that means something to you. I'll give you another one real quick with a very simplistic thing. So there's this thing called knot magic, right? So you take a string. Some people will say use a string of a certain color associated with the type of spell you're doing. And by knotting in the cord and adding a certain number of knots, you are enhancing that thought. So you repeat your spell or prayer for protection. You know, keep this person safe. And you do multiple knots. And it's supposed to reinforce, and the symbology of creating that knot is tying in that intent. Kind of cool. But you could also modify that. What if you braided knots? It's a braid instead of a knot, but what if you braided that intent into hair? What if you have a daughter and she's going to a school dance and you're scared to death that something might happen, so you knot protection into braids in her hair? Likewise, what if you were to take and modify that, and instead of braiding protection into their hair with intent and will and love, what if you were to take it and put something into your own hair, if it's long enough, male or female, for something else? What if it's to an escape? What if it's to walk unseen? So like, let's say you were being attacked or chased. What if you remove the braid from your hair, which then releases those vibrations, and you're able to escape from an attacker? There's understanding how the universe works and what might or might not work sympathetically allows you to start interacting on what's called subtle vibrational planes. So if there is more to life than what we perceive with our eyes and our five senses, if there is a vibrational quality which resonates, which we call magic, by understanding how to create our own vibrations and resonance, we can start interacting with the world on a more subtle vibrational level. But just like ripples in a pond, just because you make ripples doesn't mean you're going to move everything. There is still the natural flow to stuff. That's the other thing people don't understand. Why did a spell? It didn't work. Because you're competing with nature. There is a natural flow to life. So if you don't learn how nature works and work with it, and you're being counterproductive to it, of course your spell's not going to work. Not to mention the fact that you're not the only one putting intent and vibrations out there. There is a competition for making it done. It's the same thing. If you put a boat that you crafted on the river and you blow as hard as you can to push it upstream and it doesn't work, well, try putting it downstream and blowing it. Go with the natural flow. It's going to go. Well, it's going to go on its own. Yeah, but you can still direct it a little bit and give it some speed by blowing on it. So don't tell me you're blowing on it doesn't make that boat move a little bit faster. People don't look at this type of stuff. They get so fixated and focused on, this is what I want, this is what I need. They forget about the bigger picture. And this is why a lot of people say that this magic stuff is the craft of the wise. Because if you are not willing to explore the wisdom and understand, you're wasting your time and energy. And it's not for everyone. Not everybody is capable of doing magic because they don't understand it. Not because it's not possible or that they're not able to. It's because they cannot understand it and refuse to open their minds up. Ritual is for the gods. It is they time for me. Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. I used to dabble in chaos magic, but noticed that practitioners had become paradoxically rigid and afraid to be creative and improvisory, contrary to the original intent of the school. And that brings back the point, Brigitte, like, if you write it down and just read or hear, you need to fully understand it and embrace it to make it effective. And you see this in multiple art forms, because let's face it, magic is a type of art. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Manifestation is a personal thing, and what you put into it is what you get out of it. It's just like making a picture, and you can go through the motions and you can have something kind of come out. But if you really want to let go and be creative and make something unique, you need to just let it come out, but understand how to let it come out. That's just my 2 cents. Both of those are the same question, but chat is limited in size. So you're fine, I get it. Chat is limited. Yep, ebb and flow. So hopefully that was interesting. That was a full hour on the on a little tailspin there. I was like, yeah, we're getting to about an hour here. Let's see if there's any other questions. Yeah, there was. That was good ones though. But I'm glad. Sorry I didn't announce live in advance, but I hope you all enjoyed hanging out for 2 hours with me. I do need to stretch my legs and my arm, my shoulder. So I am going to wrap the live up. If there's any final comments or thoughts, remember these, of course, live on my YouTube channel, so you're always welcome to go back through them later and explore them yourself. So questions are always welcome. I have a Discord. Thank you, and see you later. Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome, and thanks for coming. Pagan Coffee Talk, you come to almost every single one of these. I really appreciate the support. I genuinely do. So thank you for your time. Enjoyed it very much. You are most welcome. Good to meet you. I think this first one you've come to. Thanks, BLD and everyone. Absolutely. Well, it's great hanging out. Like I said, there's always that. If you do choose to go to that pagan space through that link I sent, I run the Wizard Tower, which its entire purpose is to share stuff like I do here on my YouTube. It's not geared towards any one path. It's about sharing information and sources. And I do have a Discord, which barely gets used at all. It's mostly used for gaming, but there is a pagan section, which sometimes I'll post my lives and stuff in there as well. So you're always welcome if you want to interact, if you're looking for community. And if you're not looking for community, that's fine too. Thanks for hanging out for a little bit. I'm going to end this one here, and I will hopefully catch you next Saturday. Bye for now.